Good morning. Late morning, early afternoon. Can you hear me in the back? I would prefer not to have to hold a mic. So if I don't, if those of you who are in the back have trouble listening and hearing me, there are some seats up front. You are more than welcome to come up front. Okay? At any point, if you can't hear me, since I would prefer not to use a microphone, just let me know. Okay. So, not only have I been invited here to conduct a few workshops, but I have also been invited here to present my view on organizing and maintaining professional networks. So I will do my best as somebody who is still learning and navigating and building my own professional networks. So information that I'm about to give you hopefully won't contradict anything. It will just add a different perspective. I will try to build in some of the information that previous speakers have mentioned. Okay, so the goals for today, I thought, well, what would be the most effective? Well, maybe to organize principles of networking communities, to familiarize you with new vocabulary, new terminology related to professional networking, identify elements of networked learning, and tips for getting started. Okay? So, I had to ask myself some questions in order to guide how I would put a presentation together for you. How do professionals build and maintain networked connections for learning? What is the composition of these networks? Do these learning relationships create value, and how? How can we assess whether learning through networks in the context of professional development is effective? So, why? Well, I guess my whole purpose is to just share with you an overview of networked learning, the vocabulary related to it, for those of you that it may be very new to. And so it can be very scary when we don't know the terminology. Is that right? What's the first thing we do when we read an article? We read it's define your terms. We read the terms that are defined. So, okay, so professional networks. Technology is leading, I like this phrase, a flattening of the world. As resources, information, and knowledge are widely accessible to anyone with internet access. This comes from one of my networks that I belong to, ASCD.org, the Association for Supervision and Curriculum Development, because that's my field, curriculum development. So why do we use, or why are we using networking? Well, for many reasons, but mostly what's been mentioned here today, to share resources, right? To seek help, to get feedback, to find collaboration opportunities. So it may be to work with teachers in other schools on some project, to practice language skills. So that's the nice thing, and that's what separates us from other teachers and their networks, is that not only are we using networks to grow professionally in our content field, but our content is English, so we're learning to use that language as well, right? More than one language. Okay, so networking principles. This must be obvious to all of us. But the idea is that it's a social construction of knowledge, just like we teach in our classrooms. You know, we teach our students in groups. So our learning really should be organized in the same way. And it's highly contextualized. We are the ones that determine what our needs are, and then, you know, how can we manage our experiences and gain new information by using networks. So this way, it's more aligned with our professional practice. Instead of us just attending a workshop and somebody telling us what is important for us to know, and that's not a bad thing. okay? Because there is information, valuable information in the type of workshops that I gave yesterday, for example. At the same time, there's also the professional development that we build ourselves. And so where does this professional development idea, how has this gotten started? So with my personal experience as an educator in the K through 12 public school system in Pennsylvania, we have, I guess, or have been rethinking how teachers gain professional knowledge best. How can teachers become better teachers? And so the research tells us that teachers who are in charge of their own learning experiences are more likely to gain from that and are more effective teachers. And so in Pennsylvania, we used to have a system where once a year, our supervisor or our administrator, our superintendent, our principal would come into our room and observe us. And we would be really nervous, and we would spend a whole 2 weeks on this lesson that we knew we were going to be observed on. And then the principal would, or supervisor would do a little write-up, and we were either satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Hopefully we were satisfactory, and we can continue on until next year when it happened again. So that's the least effective way of saying to teachers, hey, you're doing a good job. And it certainly doesn't help teachers because we need feedback too. Just like our we need feedback from our students so we can guide our teaching, right? And inform our teaching. We need feedback on ourselves. So how can we do that more effectively? By taking charge of our own learning. So in Pennsylvania, our evaluation system switched. It changed. And it went from every year coming into being observed to, at the beginning of a 3-year period, we would sit down and decide, okay, now, what is something that I think I need to work on? And it might be because I was observed and my teacher said, well, you know, why don't you do something with using internet sources in your classroom? And so maybe that was something that I didn't do. And so I thought, okay, I can do that. And then I would write up my own personal plan of how I'm going to achieve that goal. And I would have 3 years to achieve that goal. I have 3 years to achieve that goal. And I set out a plan for doing that. That is what we call action research. And action research is something that is guiding teacher development. So in the past, we still have a great infrastructure, is a good word, for professional development that is brought into teachers. But at the same time, we're more responsible for our own learning in those ways. Okay? So what does the research tell us? As I said, teachers can organize and carry out their own professional development, and it's much more effective. And because of the increasing complexity of work, it requires us to use networks to access information because there's such a volume of information coming at us, right? Whether it's new websites we can use, a new way of looking at something, and just content itself is more accessible. So as a high school teacher, okay, who's teaching history, before I would use a history book. But 10 years ago, we started using the internet. And now we don't even have to use secondary. We can teach history with all primary documents because they're all loaded on the internet. Okay, so PLN, what does that stand for? So you may have heard networked learning. That's a phrase that is through the literature, and that's a British term. I've read it a lot more in British journals, and PLNs seems to be the same thing, but I tend to get that term a little bit more in American journals. So PLN is Professional Learning Network, which is the same thing as networked learning. Okay? So what does that mean, networked learning? Well, it's exactly what we've been talking about, okay? Is how can we organize our own learning and professional development through networks. Okay, and why? Well, first of all, PLNs, or professional learning networks, they're self-directed. Okay, and we say they're non-hierarchical. That means that we don't have one person coming in and telling us what we're going to do. It's a little more organic. It's the people that are involved in the network that are taking the leadership role that was just mentioned in the previous presentation. So yesterday, when I showed that slide of different generations, and here on the right, we saw those words fluid and pulling together and cut and paste. We saw that too. That's the concept of networks and the building networks, because it's fluid and it's pulling together, everybody taking a leadership role. So we're going to get into then a little bit on what's the makeup of networks, different kinds of networks, and then tips for starting to put together our own network if you haven't done that already. Okay, so PLN tools, professional learning network tools. First of all, you have to know what tool you're using to make sure that that tool is what you need. Okay, so we have two kinds of, we have information aggregation tools. We have social networks or sites where we can get information. So we want to aggregate information. We just want to collect information. And then there's social media, where we want to build a network and communicate and collaborate and solve problems. So there are two different kinds. Is one better than another? They serve different needs. So we might want to build into our network both, right? Okay, so talking about social networks then, you will find if you Google it, that there are so many definitions of how many or different kinds or types of social networks. One site or article I read said there were 7, another one said that there are 3, another said there were 5. So the idea is that there are different social networks for different purposes. We're aware of that. So as we build our professional learning network, we have to make sure that we're using the right social networks, okay? So, for example, a shared interest network. It could be personal, it could be professional, but the idea is that it's shared interest. Okay, so, well, let's go to personal, and this is the oldest one, okay? Facebook, Foursquare. I'm not sure about In Contact, so I put it up there under, I didn't put it up there, because I'm not quite sure. It could be personal, it could be professional, like Facebook. Is that right? Okay, so there's also content sharing. For example, I guess a good one, a good example would be Pinterest. Do you know Pinterest? Mm-hmm. Okay, what is Pinterest? For those of you who know. Okay, so it's a collection of pictures. You collect pictures, okay, according to your interest. Mm-hmm. All right, okay, according to the content topic. So it could be just pictures on some personal topic, but it could also be pictures on some professional topic. Okay, so it can also be professional as well. And then there's shared interest. And this is where we're talking about that's more community oriented. And this is teacher sharing, okay? Or it could be personal sharing. But so shared interest is where you will probably look for the types of websites that you want to add to your professional learning network, like LinkedIn. I didn't put In Contact, but In Contact would go up there too, I believe. But it could also be, have you heard of, can I take a side note? Do you mind? Have you heard of meetup.com?
No.
Okay, because I have asked a lot of people, and I don't know if you have this in Russia. It's a networking tool, but it's a personal networking tool. It's not a professional. It can be, but it's usually personal. So say you're going to go live in a new country and you don't know anyone, okay? Or in a new city. Say you're going to move to Moscow. So we have what's called meetup.com. And you can register at the site, type in things that you're interested in, like climbing, hiking, mountain biking, and you can find groups that have just started up. It's all organic. You register, and then in your email box comes invitations to join the group and to participate if you like. Okay? So do you have something like that here in Russia? Okay, I thought I'd mention it because it's something that's fascinating, and if you do tend to go abroad, it is a nice way to and live in another city, either in Russia or live in the U.S. for a while if you're studying. It's a good way to make connections, okay? So when you're traveling. So back on point. Thank you. Building a professional learning network. So we talked about, it's really all social learning, okay? Whether it's aggregate, which is getting the information, or communicating. And so I thought I would break it down into, if you were going to build a professional learning network, which you already have one, because we're all seasoned teachers. Because we just don't think of adding, necessarily adding the web part of it, or even if we do, considering that professional development. So, for example, you have regional, local, regional, and international organizations. Kelta would be a regional one, NATE would be a national one, and TESOL would be an international organization. So these are the kind of organizations, professional organizations, that you might want to add to your network. Should you go out and add every network? If you can handle that information, good for you. So the idea of all this content, and it's overwhelming, is to start small. I think that a former speaker mentioned there were only 2 Russian websites or organizations devoted to in Krasnoyarsk. Yes, so it might be nice to add one of those to your professional network. So you're, networking with not only local, but international as well. So you're getting different perspectives. And how can you, okay. Then I mentioned LinkedIn. And the reason I have them organized this way is for me, is primarily research, conferences, whereas here, this is really maintaining contacts in LinkedIn. And then, of course, there's also building your professional network through academic resources, ongoing professional development through coursework. So, for example, MOOCs. Have you heard of a MOOC? Mm-hmm. What does MOOC stand for? Online course. Very good. Massive open online courses. And so Coursera is an example of a large system of MOOCs. And a key there is it's open. Okay, so it's open to everybody. Doesn't mean it's all free. You may have to pay for some of the courses, but they are open. And then there's OERUs. And this just came up. It's Open Educational Resource Universities. So what seems to be moving in the direction from MOOCs to OERUs is that MOOCs, you're getting professional development. You're getting courses from professors from Harvard or Stanford or Moscow or wherever, quality courses. Same with OERUs. But OERUs is looking more towards moving into the idea of gaining a certification from that. Certification as in perhaps a master's degree. Okay, that type of a certification or PhD. So it's moving into the field of just not professional development, but qualifications towards a degree. So we'll see how that works. And then, of course, really to build your network community, to get this information, you need to do things. You need 2 things. You need to get the information, aggregate it through RSS feeds, and of course, using Web 2.0 tools, which is all the social media that you use to contact, collaborate, discuss ideas. So RSS feed. Now you've seen RSS in a little box on different websites. And let me go to the examples that were mentioned in the first speaker. Innovative Teachers Network, or the second speaker. Are you familiar with that website? She put a picture up there. Okay, it's it.n.ru. Okay, and then there's openclass.ru. Okay, and both of those had a little button that said RSS feed. So do you all know what that means? I'm so glad, because if you would have all said yes, I've only learned these things too. I think it was at the NAE conference last year in Moscow. It was a speaker from Moscow, Economics University, I believe. So I'm learning with you. And the what this means is, you know how you sign up to get information from different sites? And those sites, it could be a news, it could be news information, and they tend to post information regularly. Okay? So instead of you going to each one of your sites every day to get your information, you create a site where all that information just comes to you. It comes to you through an RSS feed. And so what you do is you just sign up. You create your page. So we'll take a look at examples. What was fascinating is throughout the research we're finding that PLNs, professional learning networks, are very highly contextualized. We can't really predict what site is going to continue to be successful, like a Ning or a Google feed, or if it isn't. So things like Google had an RSS feed site that they took down because it was popular and then it wasn't popular. And same with the Ning. So as educators, we have to find and decide and evaluate for ourselves which is going to be the sites that we include in our professional network. And they may be sites recommended by our schools. It could be sites where our colleagues are part of that network and we're networking together. And it may be different ones depending on our needs. Okay, so building your network. I think I've described all of these so far, but we can take a look at, for example, the RSS feeds. These are to Digo and Twitter, okay? But there are many others. And all you do is type in RSS feeds, and you will find a site that you can use. Yesterday, I mentioned my haiku class. That just happens to be the management class that after 3 or 4 management sites, I thought, well, that's okay. I can use this one. It's fairly simple. I can upload documents. I can have my participants blog, create discussions. I can create polls on that site. So I liked it, and that's why I chose it. And so you will do the same thing, with your feed, which is much easier than going to every website to get information. Isn't it? Okay, but the scary thing is how, right? If we don't know, now we know what RSS feed means. Now we know what it does, that it brings that information to us, into our page, but how do we get a page? What's the answer? Google it, right? And YouTube it. And then you will find step-by-step directions on all of that. Okay, so some tips besides Google it, okay, are to start small. Select only one tool to use. Okay? And then once you can handle one tool, you can go to another one. So just one site, and work and be familiar with that site. It could be, for example, if you select an RSS reader, Feedly, or microblogging site like Twitter, add 1 or 2 blogs for people to follow, because you will get information coming at you. And as it comes at you, if it's too much, delete some of it. Limit the amount of time you spend using PLN tools. So this is really important. How many of you are on the internet every day? Like we have to, oh, okay. But how many of you are on these sites every day following Twitter? And follow every day? For how, wow, okay. But not all of you. Why not all of you? It's time consuming, isn't it? So the strategy is limiting our time as well. So, set a daily limit. 10 minutes a day for 3 days a week. Okay? And build from there. To prevent information overload, keep it simple. Select a topic, a teaching technique, or skill that you would like to learn more about. Okay? And so what you're doing is you read only the posts, tweets, and forums on that topic. So say you've decided that for this, your own professional learning development, you might want to start with assessment and feedback. Okay, what are other ways that I can include assessment and feedback? And, tailor rubrics for my projects my students are doing. I think that, and why do we do that, as a matter of fact? Well, where does it all begin? It begins with reflection. So yesterday, when we were talking about the critical thinking classroom, the last element we didn't get to, which is the first one that was talked about today, is the idea of reflection. And so, as teachers, we're reflective. And when we think about what doesn't work in our classroom, oh, that went so badly. And sometimes you're observed when the lesson goes badly. That's what makes us better teachers, right? Because we want to take the time to figure things out. So networking is a way for us to come up with a project we want to work on, just to become better at it, just to learn about it. It's all about curiosity. And I think that's why we became teachers in the first place, because we love to learn. We do love to learn, because teachers are one of the few professions, well, I shouldn't say few today, but it is a lifelong learning thing. Isn't it? Yes. Okay, and we're experts at learning. We really are experts at learning. Even though sometimes we think, oh, it's all new, I don't know where to start. We're experts at learning, I think, because we figured it out along the way, and we want to help our students become experts at learning too. So first, it's the self-assessment. And so the principles of action research are recall your lesson, or throughout the school year, something that you could work on. Reflect on that lesson and draw conclusions. I think I want to work on assessment. And then do research. And that's where you might want to start building your PLN. If you just based around one concept or one topic. Okay, and this is just a little quiz. You can go online to find out what your network quotient is. So we've heard of your intelligence quotient, called your IQ, right? And then we've heard of your EQ, your emotional quotient, intelligence quotient. Have you heard of that? Okay, and now we have our network quotient, which means, how savvy are we at networking? So there's a quiz you can take if you go online to find out. It's all in fun, really. But it puts into perspective the different types of elements that we use when we network. Do you have any questions? Please ask. I'm assuming you probably won't, because you didn't have any questions yesterday, but we have some new people here today too, so maybe those people would like to speak up. Or yesterday, if you didn't get to ask a question.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So it's really a brand of these days, professional networking. What about the teachers, the colleagues?
Mm-hmm.
Do they really do it, or you involve them, you try to motivate them to show the perspectives of this professional development?
Yeah, it's two sides of the same coin. It's two ways of looking at something. And so I guess I could say with my colleagues in Pennsylvania, there are teachers that don't want professional development. It's true. Some teachers don't want to grow personally. Is that most teachers? No, I don't think so. And I think technology really scares teachers that are not familiar with technology. And I think that's a limiting factor for wanting to gain professional development and grow. But what I mean by it's two sides of the same coin is sometimes we feel forced, like if we're not doing that, then we're not good educators, and we should be doing this, and we should be on this website, and we should be developing this, and we need to get these tools. But at the same time, when we have that coming at us, it's our natural curiosity as teachers that make us want to learn and want to grow. And so when we think about that side of it, that's what makes learning fun. And when we remember that, then all of a sudden we get that renewed feeling of I want to discover. So one personal experience in the last few years was I was in front of a panel of professors for my candidacy exam. This was when I first started my doctoral degree. So in the U.S., how it works is you have to apply to a program. That was scary. I didn't even think I could get that much done. And then I was admitted and I started my coursework. And we have to take so many classes. So I had to take, but you can only take 6 credits, 2 full-time classes, which equals about 100 hours of, of course, 90 hours of coursework plus 90 times 5 is 450 outside hours of research work. So that's all. You only get one half a year in, and then you have to go take an exam called a candidacy. And if you don't pass it, you don't get to go on. And it's and so you have to do a lot of research. And I remember my professors were asking me questions, and I said, well, but I didn't have the answers to those questions before I started my research. Okay? And so that was, and it was something that when I heard myself say that, I realized that that's what research is. And that's what professional development and growth is. It's that curiosity that we have about learning about a topic. So, my coursework is in curriculum and instruction, and developing curricula for public school systems, and specifically English language programs. So that's my very specific focus. At the same time, for me, there are other things that I have to know about. And so how do I do that? My natural curiosity leads me to that research.
Thanks. Maybe it sounds strange, but when there is no such personal quality as curiosity, what to do with it? How to develop, how to influence development in professional community?
That is a very good question. So when there's no curiosity, it's hard to believe that there isn't any curiosity. Sometimes I think we're so overwhelmed, we don't have time to be curious. I think that's what it is. So, do you agree? We get so busy sometimes that we don't have time to be curious. So that's when we have to stop and take a step back and remember that it might be hard right now because I'm overwhelmed. Even coming here to Russia last year, I remember how many, I have pulled more all-nighters in the last 3 years, and I'm turning 50. I never pulled an all-nighter as a teacher, when I was in my 30s or my 40s. So and I feel overwhelmed sometimes. So to reflect on what's important for me, I think that's the thing. Because sometimes I feel like I have to do all this for somebody else. But then I have to pull back and say, but what's important to me? And it's my integrity. So if I want to be a better teacher and I want to know, then, that's whenever I take the 5 minutes to go look up something on the web and see, can I do this? And really, that's what it is for me, too. Can I do this? I remember learning how to take a screenshot of my cell phone. On my cell phone? No idea. So who did I ask? Somebody 30 years younger than me. And they couldn't do it. And then I felt really good. But then I went to Google and I learned how, step by step. It's a good feeling when you learn something new, really, with technology. Do you agree? Yeah, okay. So that could be your starting point, is saying, what is the biggest thing that I'm afraid of? And that's what drives me, obviously, because I came to Russia and I'm here in Siberia. So, you know, I must have some sense of adventure, but what scares me about technology? What's something I didn't know? And then look it up and figure it out.